Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to trace a straight, honestly shocking line from classic sci-fi dystopia right up to the very screens you're looking at right now. We usually think of censorship as this relic of the past, right? Something involving kerosene and giant bonfires. But today we're looking at how the mechanics of erasure haven't disappeared, they've just evolved.
So here's our roadmap for This Explainer. First, the new Fahrenheit 451. Then, privileges, not absolute rights. After that, decades of music censorship, followed by politicians versus gangster rap, and finally, the algorithmic censors. Let's jump right in.
Section 1. The new Fahrenheit 451.
We're starting with Ray Bradbury's chilling 1953 warning and how it's literally morphed into a modern corporate business model. In his novel, firemen burned books at 451 degrees, mostly because society just preferred wall-sized TVs and constant distraction over, well, critical thought. Fast forward to 2024. Tech company Anthropic launches Project Panama. Now, they didn't use fire. Instead, they used hydraulic cutters to slice the spines off up to 8,000 books every single day. They destructively scan these massive stacks to feed their AI models, essentially pulping and recycling the physical copies just to harvest the raw data inside.
But what's truly wild here is the legal loophole this whole thing exposes. You might be wondering, why destroy the book at all? Why not just scan it and keep it on a shelf? Well, in June 2025, Judge William Alsup ruled that buying a physical book, scanning it, physically destroying it, and keeping only the internal data is considered quintessentially transformative fair use. Crazy, right? Destroying the physical book actually legally protected these companies from having to pay licensing fees. And of course, that just put the mass pulping of used books into absolute overdrive.
There was a catch, though. Anthropic had also trained their AI on pirated PDFs. So in September 2025, they ended up paying this absolutely massive settlement, $1.5 billion. To put that into perspective, that averages out to around $3,000 per book for 500,000 works. But here is the crucial part, and honestly the incredible irony of that legal loophole we just talked about. They got to keep the data from the physical books they actively destroyed. So the knowledge gets completely privatized inside a corporate database that, you guessed it, we now have to pay to access.
All right, moving on to Section 2, privileges, not absolute rights.
Let's step away from AI for just a second and look at the late, truly legendary comedian George Carlin, because he established the central philosophy we're tracing in this explainer. He delivered this incredibly famous bit just months before he died in 2008. His whole argument: you don't actually have rights, you just have temporary privileges. His proof was the internment of 110,000 Japanese Americans back in 1942. Think about it. No trial, no lawyer, zero due process. Citizens were thrown into camps simply because of where their parents happened to be born. Carlin argued, pretty convincingly, that if the government can take a right away that easily, well, it was never really a right to begin with.
And the thing is, Carlin wasn't just preaching about this stuff, he literally lived it. In 1972, he was arrested in Milwaukee for his infamous 7 dirty words routine. A year later, that same routine aired on WBAI radio, which immediately triggered an FCC complaint from a father who heard it. This sparked a massive 5-year legal battle that went all the way up to a 1978 Supreme Court decision. In a tight 5-4 ruling in FCC v. Pacifica, the court decided that the government absolutely can regulate indecent language on broadcasts if kids might happen to hear it. So, his right to free speech, turns out, it was entirely conditional.
Which brings us to Section 3, Decades of Music Censorship.
This whole mechanism of conditional rights, it forms a perfectly straight line through American history. And honestly, nowhere is this clearer than in the music industry. It's like a repeating loop. The targets change every single decade, but the moral panic remains exactly the same. Let's look at the timeline. In 1956, TV networks deemed Elvis Presley's dancing so unbelievably vulgar that camera operators were strictly ordered to film him only from the waist up. Jump forward to 1985, and a group called the PMRC completely forces a Senate hearing over explicit porn rock lyrics. By 1989, it escalates to the FBI actually sending an official warning letter to the record label of hip-hop group NWA over their song Straight Outta Compton. That was the very first time the FBI tried to censor a rap group.
Now, going back to those 1985 PMRC hearings for a second, a truly surreal alliance showed up to testify against this censorship. It was wild. You had Twisted Sister's heavy metal frontman Dee Snider completely, and I mean meticulously, dismantling their arguments with pure logic. You had avant-garde rocker Frank Zappa straight up comparing the censorship effort to fascism, and then perhaps most surprisingly, you had wholesome folk singer John Denver. He testified that his nature song Rocky Mountain High was falsely banned as a drug reference by people who, quite frankly, had clearly never even seen the Rocky Mountains.
But despite that absolutely brilliant defense from the artists, the record industry ultimately caved to the pressure. On November 1st, 1985, the parental advisory sticker was born, eventually evolving into that iconic black and white box we all recognize from 1990. But we need to understand, this wasn't just some harmless warning label. The immediate fallout was brutal. Massive retailers like Walmart and Sears instantly refused to sell any album wearing that sticker. It essentially erased those artists from Middle America overnight.
Okay, Section 4. Politicians versus gangster rap.
So by the 1990s, we really start to see how this form of cultural censorship evolved into a highly effective, completely bipartisan political tool. Take a look at this breakdown. We have C. Dolores Tucker, a legendary civil rights icon who literally marched with MLK, aggressively protesting labels and lobbying Congress to regulate gangster rap. And who's supporting her? Conservative politician Bill Bennett teams up with her to fight these explicit lyrics. Meanwhile, Democratic President Bill Clinton quietly supported her crusade as well, mostly because bashing rap helped politicians across the entire spectrum appear pro-family. It's fascinating. Censorship suddenly became this incredibly powerful unifier for vastly different political agendas.
The pushback to this was intense. Tupac Shakur actually called Tucker out by name on his album, clearly viewing her as a traitor to black artists. And the story gets even crazier. After Tupac's tragic murder, Tucker actually sued his estate for $10 million, claiming his lyrics presented false facts about her to his millions of fans. But in the year 2000, the courts decisively shut that down. The Third Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that rap lyrics attacking a critic are protected First Amendment opinions, not actionable facts.
And that brings us to Section 5, the algorithmic censors.
Now, let's connect all this history to the very screens we are looking at right now. The tools have definitely changed. We've moved from government Senate hearings to complex black box software, but the erasure remains exactly the same. Today, that old parental advisory sticker has basically been replaced by demonetization. This is a practice where a platform deems a creator's content not advertiser-friendly, totally cutting off the creator's income. But here's the crazy paradox. The platform often continues to run ads on that exact same video, keeping 100% of the revenue for themselves. Creators often refer to this insidious system as digital sharecropping. Think about it. You buy the gear, you do all the work, but some hidden algorithm somewhere holds your entire paycheck hostage.
Just look at how this builds over time. Back in 2012, YouTube started silently demonetizing videos with absolutely zero warning to the creators. Then, by 2017, we hit the first adpocalypse, which triggered massive algorithmic panic across the platform. And jumping all the way to 2025, we saw the AI purge, which that's where they basically flipped a switch overnight without any warning, and tens of thousands of channels just lost their livelihoods under the incredibly vague umbrella of inauthentic content.
So, why the sudden, brutal shifts? Well, you just have to follow the money. Take a look at this staggering figure, $750 million. That represents the advertising money that was pulled out of YouTube by major brands in a single month during that 2017 ad apocalypse. That right there is the smoking gun. It proves that corporate fear of lost revenue is the ultimate, completely uncompromising driver of modern censorship.
And because these algorithms completely lack any sort of human context, just look at the collateral damage caught in the dragnet. Vital historical education and gaming channels flagged for violence. In 2019, entirely benign identities were suppressed just for having LGBTQ terms like gay or trans in the title. In 2020, news channels couldn't even make money covering COVID-19, literally the biggest global story of our lives. Even just using swear words in the first 7 to 15 seconds got you hit between 2021 and 2023. The exact same mechanism designed to block actual terrorists is being used to financially suppress basic education, personal identity, and global news.
So from Ray Bradbury's firemen burning physical books, to the FBI targeting musicians, right up to today's AI quietly demonetizing our digital history, that straight line of erasure just continues unbroken. It leaves us with this critical final thought to take away from this explainer. If George Carlin was right all those years ago, and our rights are indeed just temporary privileges, who actually controls the off switch for our culture today?